Valley Church. Hope for those who have given up on church.
Hi folks, so good to spend some time with you today. We're going to be working on a sermon series we're calling The Blessed Life, about how to be in a place of extraordinary blessing with God. This is powerful stuff and going to be helpful to you in so many ways. I hope you can tune in each and every week as we work through this. And if you ever want to reach me, you can write me at g@freedomvalley.org or write the Freedom Valley Church, 3185 York Road, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. We're just over the hill from your house. We'd love to get a visit from you and your question in person, or feel free to email me if that works better, or write by regular mail. God bless you. Thanks for watching today.
There are 55,857 people in our community that are disconnected. The next campaign is our strategy to help reduce that number. It's been a year since we started the next campaign, and God has already done amazing things through Freedom Valley. Last December, God gave us the opportunity to purchase the land across the street. That land has over 20 acres of buildable space that we can use to meet the needs of our community in any way that God sees fit. God has big plans for that space. He is going to impact thousands of lives through the seeds being sown. That land is ours.
The next campaign is all about people connecting with God. So I started coming to Freedom Valley back in January of this year. I guess the thing that really drew me in was the worship. I felt like we were really connected to God in that way, and that Freedom Valley really created this great atmosphere for worship. The revamping of the sanctuaries created this great environment for people like me to just worship the Lord and connect with Him. And it's really helped grow my relationship with the Lord.
There are 55,857 people in our community that are disconnected. Less than a year ago, my family was part of that number. Since coming to Freedom Valley, my kids are so different. The amount of people that care for my children the way that I care for them is amazing. One of the main focuses of the next campaign is our kids ministry and the renovations that are taking place there. We're in the process of completely remodeling and renovating the children's wing. I really think that it's going to make a huge difference in getting the kids excited and learning more about the Bible and what we as a church stand for. God has provided so much for my family within this past year, and I am so excited to see what He has in store for us.
My heart is for people because God's heart is for people. It's really an awesome feeling when you get to come to a place where you feel love as soon as you step in the door, when you really get a sense of oneness with people. It doesn't matter your race, your age, your culture, from wherever, whoever, whenever. It's all about love, and that's the kind of feel you get as soon as you walk through these doors. And that's why it's such a major impact the next campaign is having on this community and as a whole. Through people giving to the next campaign, our parking lot is just about finished. And now we have so many more spaces for people to come and really be a part of what God is doing here at Freedom Valley. The next campaign itself is just all about bringing people together and providing more for our community so that we can stand as one.
My friends are next.
My relationships are next.
My family is next.
My community is next.
Hi folks, and welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. I got a joke for you to get started. A blonde got lost in a snowstorm, and didn't panic because he remembered exactly what his daddy told him. His daddy said, if you ever get lost in a snowstorm, just wait for the plow truck to come by and follow him wherever he goes. So he waited, and the plow truck came by, and he followed him. For 45 minutes he followed him. Finally, the plow truck driver got out, came back to his car and said, son, what are you doing? He said, my daddy said if I'm ever lost, just to follow the plow truck driver and I'll get there. The driver said, well, okay, but I'm done with Walmart, now I'm going over to Best Buy. And off he went. So he found out he was following the tow truck driver, the snow plow driver in Walmart. I don't know, that's a crazy one, I think. Denise Yates sent me that one. I like it so much. We're going to read in Deuteronomy chapter 8 today. If you want to go over there to Deuteronomy chapter 8. And we're talking about the blessed life, how to be an incredibly blessed person, how to be a person who's blessed beyond measure. I want to read a good part of Deuteronomy chapter 8 because it has so much value for us today in talking about the blessed time of America, the blessed time of our church, the blessed time of whatever God has been doing among us. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 1. This is Moses. As he finishes his life, he's talking about how to live the blessed life. He says, be careful to obey all the commands I'm giving you today. Then you will live and multiply. And you will enter and occupy the land the Lord swore to give to your ancestors. Remember how the Lord your God led you through the wilderness for these 40 years, humbling you and testing you to prove your character and to find out whether or not you would obey his commands. Yes, he humbled you by letting you go hungry and then feeding you with manna, a food previously unknown to you or your ancestors. And he did it to teach you that people do not live by bread alone. Rather, we live by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. For all these 40 years, your clothes didn't wear out. Your feet did not blister or swell. Think about it. Just as a parent disciplines a child, the Lord your God disciplines you for your own good. So obey the commands the Lord your God is giving you by walking in his ways and fearing him. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land of flowing streams and pools of water with fountains and springs that gush out in the valleys and hills. It's a land of wheat and barley, of grapevines, fig trees, and pomegranates, of olive oil and honey. It's a land where food is plentiful, nothing is lacking. It's a land where iron is as common as stone, and copper is abundant in the hills. When you've eaten your fill, be sure to praise the Lord your God for the good land he's given you. But this is the time to be careful. Beware that in your plenty you do not forget the Lord your God and disobey his commands, regulations, and decrees that I'm giving you today. For when you have become full and prosperous and have built fine homes to live in, and when your flocks and herds have become very large, and your silver and gold have multiplied along with everything else, be careful. Do not become proud at that time and forget the Lord your God, who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. Do not forget that he led you through the great and terrifying wilderness with its poisonous snakes and scorpions, where it's so hot and dry. He gave you water from a rock. He fed you with manna in the wilderness, a food unknown to your ancestors. He did this to humble you and test you for your own good. He did all this so that you would never say to yourself, I've achieved this wealth with my own strength and energy. Remember the Lord your God. He's the one who gives you the power to be successful in order to fulfill the covenant he confirmed to your ancestors with an oath. I want to just focus on the first couple of verses, but I wanted to give you that context because the context is powerful and it's good. In Moses really ruminating about what happened to the people of Israel during this time. And he says, right up front, he says in verse 1, be careful to obey all the commands I'm giving you today. Then you will live and multiply, and you will enter and occupy the land the Lord swore to give to your ancestors. Here's Moses saying, listen, you want to live and multiply? You want to become somebody great in the eyes of God and in the eyes of people. Follow the Lord your God. Listen, the temptation will be to follow anything else. There'll come a time when it's easy to go your own way. It'll be easy to think about another thing, to do things another way. But if you want to live and multiply, be careful to obey all the commands I'm giving you today. That's what Moses is saying. And he says, listen, the Lord your God spelled it out. He gave you the actual commands from his heart so that you would know exactly how to live and how to multiply. And he wants you to have this available to you all the time so that you know how to go about your life here on earth. And you can prepare for eternal life. That's what he said to you. Pay attention to his words. That's what Moses is saying. Pay attention. Pay attention to the words of the Lord so that you know exactly what he said and how he said and what he meant by what he said. That's what matters. In fact, we've just been studying the great things that Jesus taught. The great things Jesus taught, he points out a number. I think we pointed out something like 9 errors where you've heard what was said about the law. But I say unto you, Jesus said, he said, listen, here's people who didn't pay attention and were not careful. And they didn't get to live and multiply in the land for a long time because of that. They missed out on what God wanted to do in their lives. So pay attention to what he said, because what he said matters to you, and it will cause you to live and multiply. Listen carefully, he says, to the words of the Lord. What Moses is saying here is that if you pay careful attention to the words of God, you think a lot about them and their implications and how they matter and why they matter, then God will multiply you and make you great in your day. So we've had some days as a church where we've seen God move powerfully and incredibly. We've seen God do incredible things among us. It's time for us now to plan to live and multiply for a long time, to be people who both live in the land God gave us and multiply in it. We multiply the seed that God gave us. We continue to become people of great substance and value and passion and ability in the land that God has given you. And God is giving us some powerful and great words to help us to know what it is that matters to his heart. So when we hear Jesus say, you've heard that it was said, but I say, he was reflecting the true heart of God. Not the folklore, but what God really meant in each one of the laws that he gave. I believe Jesus would teach the same thing today, by the way. He would say, you've messed up in a lot of ways. You've become people who don't really care about what God really says. If you want to become people who live long and multiply in the land, then you become people who care very much about what God said and how to succeed, because that's what he's telling you with the laws, with the principles of the Word of God, with the values that he sets in place. He's telling us exactly how we can live and multiply in the land, how we can become people who do it very well, and how we become people who are careful now. You know, he's saying, be careful now, because now is the time when the temptations multiply everywhere. We could be doing all kinds of things. We could be paying attention to all kinds of things. You can get excited about football today. Listen, there's nothing wrong with getting excited about football unless football becomes like a god to you. Then there's everything wrong with it. And it's become, for some of us, it's become the reason we live. It's become everything to us. And he's saying, understand that the Lord your God gave you laws, and he gave you ideas and values to live by that are so much greater than football, and so much greater than politics, and so much greater than business, and so much greater than relationships, so much greater than the other things in our world, that God will cause us to live and multiply in the land in a powerful way if we pay attention to what he said. He says in in verse 2, remember how the Lord your God led you through the wilderness for these 40 years, humbling you and testing you to prove your character and to find out whether or not you would obey his commands. Now he says, remember how. What he's saying here is that we remember the ways that God used. God used so many different patterns and ideas and passions to show them what his heart really was. And he walked them through the times. He says there were times of hunger and times of thirst. And all of these were part of God proving himself to us and God causing us to become people that understand his heart and his passion for us. Now, he always provided in these things. He never wanted people to die. He only wanted people to live and multiply in the land. But he says, remember how he did it. Think through the difficult times in your life, the down times in your congregation, the difficult times that you went through as a person or as a company or as a business. And he says, remember how the Lord your God led you this whole time. He carefully did what he could to cause all of his heart to be accomplished in you and for you to be able to pick up who he is and what he's about. He did all of these things so that you would become somebody who's a true child of God, a true servant of the Most High, somebody who follows him. He took authority and led and disciplined through times of want. You know, there was a time when Israel didn't have water, and they complained to Moses and bitterly criticized him. Why did you bring us out here? Why did you put us in the midst of this? Not thinking that God didn't bring us out here to kill us. He has provision. And although it may take a miracle, it may take something great, he will provide. He led Moses to a rock and had him plunge his stick through that rock, and water gushed out, enough to feed everybody. He provided manna in the desert, it says, where there's like this dew that fell from heaven. It came down like coriander seed, this fine little substance that covered the ground, and they were able to pick it up and eat it. It was healthy and good and powerful for them. None of that was for them to have less or to be people of lack. It was God providing for them so that they would have an abundance and would always have more than enough in every situation. It was God trying to show himself to them. So he says, remember how you went through this stuff and how God provided through all of those things because he loves you deeply and completely. He's passionate about you, and he wants to be your God and allow you to be his people. He dealt with issues, always building character and always handling things. Listen, God does not take you to the brink of death for you to die. He wants you to learn how to depend on him. He wants you to become the person that he's created you to be. He wants you to fully develop all of the character in you and become completely submitted to who he is. All of the stuff you went through, it could have been temptations, it could have been lack, could have been difficulty. All of those things, none of them were to kill you. None of them were to hurt you. Remember how he brought you through. All kind of stuff. You know, somewhere we probably ought to have a book of remembrance of the stuff that God did. Somewhere there ought to be an Ark of the Covenant in our lives. A collection of the things that God gave us to hold and to look at and to mull over and to think about the powerful things that he did in our lives. Remember how that God only did every one of those things so that you would see how they all matter to him. He took time to make sure that they got the point every time. It's God saying, listen, I want to make sure that you're getting all of this each time. I want to make sure that you have the heart of God in your life. And so let me take time over each issue. Let me take time for you to think through and to carefully mull over the various issues that come at you so that you have the ability to live and multiply and remember how God did all of these things. Then he says in verse 5, think about it. Just as a parent disciplines a child, the Lord disciplines you for your own good. It's God saying, hey, listen, every one of these items were simply disciplined to get you back on track. There were simply guideposts along the way for you to be able to get the heart of God and to hear his heart really, really well. That's his only purpose in them. Whatever life has thrown at you, all of these things can be used to see and hear the heart of God just a little bit better. So we become people who are not only passionate for him, but we hear and feel his heart in everything that we do. So he says, think about it. Just as a parent disciplines a child, the Lord your God disciplines you for your very own good. This is God saying, I am carefully taking care of every detail of your life to cause you to be disciplined and to cause you to be somebody that understands that his heart for you is always good. Think about it and take time to care about the heart of God. You know, God said that we should think about it so much that we ought to write his commands on the doorposts of our house. That is, that we ought to have our decorations and our mottos and our pictures and the things that we keep and all of the things of our lives in places where everybody else can get the heart of God along with us. That's what he's saying. To be somebody who carefully thinks through what he's doing and how he does it. He cares deeply about what it takes to make you strong. And all that God is doing through all of the disciplines of life is only trying to make you strong, to make you somebody that you can power through every part of life. Let me ask you this question. If you're later in life, are you stronger than you were earlier? You know, everybody is later in life at some point. We ought to always be stronger than we were earlier. We ought to always have the ability to hear God's heart, to know what he says, to walk with him more passionately than we ever have before. That's his passion for us. He says, think about it. Think carefully about these things so that you can become somebody who is walking with him and thinking like him, becoming strong as he is strong, and able to take down the enemy at every turn because he did. That's the heart of God for you. He cares deeply about what it takes to make you strong. None of the things in life that happened to you happened because God is wanting to hurt you. He's never out to make you somebody less than you are. But somebody more than you are is what he wants always from people and from us as a whole. As a church, we've gone through incredible things. When we first started to buy the property that we're sitting on today, it wasn't zoned right. It wasn't zoned for a church. And the American Center for Law and Justice helped us with a letter written to officials to say, you can't stop a church from being here. And so we had them send that letter. And the officials quickly changed their mind and made it possible for a church to be here. Now we have a church. We've been told a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we couldn't build a riding arena on it for a therapeutic handicap ministry. But it's here today, and it's operating, fully functioning. It is something that God only allowed those things to make us stronger and more adept at our world, more in tune and more in touch, more able to do it. And what he wants us to think about is he brought us through every one of those things so that we become stronger. He brought us through so that we become more in touch with what he's doing in the world today, more powerful and more able to pull down strongholds and more accomplished at doing it, at learning how to do it. We ought to think about that. That none of those things just happened. They did not just float into existence and back out again. It was God giving us opportunity to exert ourselves in real time and to see him at work. Now we're looking at doing great things across the road. We want to build a whole new worship center just across the road in the 22 new acres he gave us last year. And we're so excited about this whole prospect. This is what we're doing next. We're building this new property so that this property can possibly be inhabited by our schools. It can be functional and powerful, and we can build a whole new property that has more functionality in a place where we don't have to tear down the sanctuary 3 times a day, because we have a functional worship space that is just worship. A place where we don't have to constantly rebuild everything because it only has 1 or 2 purposes. It doesn't have a million. It's able to do the things that God's called us to do with much more acuity, much more ability than we've ever had, where we can get the things he's called us to do done. Now, we're asking you to help us pay for it this year. We're asking you to exert yourselves. But all of that is not a discipline that is meant to hurt you. It's a discipline that will cause you to walk in the provision of God because you've stretched yourself. My family and I do it all the time. We stretch ourselves to be people that give to God and give powerfully to the things that God cares about. Because when we sacrifice in that way, he makes us stronger, and he causes us to live the great life that he's called us to live, more and more passionate, more and more able, more and more accomplished in doing everything that he's called us to do. That's what it's going to be about. So we need to be thinking about that his desire for our sacrifice is never a desire to hurt us. It's a desire to make us better. It's a desire to make us whole and completely in tune with him. That's what we're doing. In the next campaign, we're working on this. Now, we showed you a video at the beginning where we're talking about some of the things that God has accomplished. We're excited about all of those, but we're only excited about them so that we can brag on our God and show that he wants to get us to the next level. It's his passion and his purpose for us to be a church far more able to reach the 55,857 people who don't know God today within 20 miles of this church. 55,857 don't know God today within 20 miles of this church because they've not yet had opportunity to walk with him and to see him work. We're going to be part of that. We're going to see the power of God at work among us. So in the next campaign, we're asking God that we're able to live and multiply in the land for a long time. We never forget what he's done for us, that we remember how he brought us through so much to get us so far, to do so many great things for him, that we think carefully about each step that we take in a way that multiplies that step for good and for the kingdom of God. Thank you so much for being part of it, for walking with us in it, for helping us to succeed in it. I love you all so much for that and really appreciate your willingness to commit with us at the next level as we go. Thank you so much. God bless you today. Have a great day in Jesus. Thanks for watching The Blessed Life today. Thanks for being a part of this. We're about becoming people who are extraordinarily blessable by God. And I think you're going to enjoy every part of this series. Hope you get to tune in for all of it. Love to hear from you. If you can write me, you can write the Freedom Valley Church at 3185 York Road, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, 17325. Or you can email me, g@freedomvalley.org. Either way, I would love to hear from you and whatever God puts in your heart concerning our programming today or throughout any part of this series. Thank you so much. God bless you.